The Inheritance and the Dragon. Morgan Chen had never expected to inherit anything in their life, let alone an interstellar antique shop from a great-uncle they'd never met. Yet here they stood, keys in hand, staring up at a storefront nestled between a Zero noodle bar and a holographic tattoo parlor in the bustling Proxima Centauri trade station. The Cosmic Emporium, Morgan read aloud, the sign's peculiar shifting letters somehow translating themselves in real time. Property of Morgan Chen, purveyor of fine interstellar antiquities and curiosities. The lawyer, if that's what the shimmering, semi-translucent being that had delivered the inheritance documents could be called, had offered minimal explanation. Great Uncle Zhang had apparently been quite the collector, hopping between star systems acquiring oddities for nearly a century before his unfortunate temporal displacement incident, whatever that meant. Morgan sighed, running a hand through their short, dark hair. 6 months ago, they'd been a museum conservator with a stable job and a tiny apartment in New Chicago. Now they were unemployed, homeless, and apparently the owner of what looked like a cross between a pawn shop and a mad scientist's laboratory, 80 light years from Earth. Well, it's this or go back to restoration work, Morgan muttered, pressing their thumb against the door's biometric scanner. The entrance hissed open, revealing a cavernous interior that seemed physically impossible given the shop's modest exterior. The Cosmic Emporium defied description. Shelves stretched upward for what seemed like hundreds of meters, accessible by floating platforms that bobbed gently in the air. Display cases contained objects that hurt Morgan's eyes to look at directly, items that folded in on themselves or seemed to exist in multiple places simultaneously. In one corner, what appeared to be a collection of antique Earth clocks all ticked in perfect synchronization, despite displaying wildly different times. A holographic interface flickered to life as Morgan stepped further inside. "Greetings, Proprietor Chen," said a pleasant, genderless voice. "I am TSS, the Trade Emporium Service System. How may I assist you today?" Morgan jumped. "You can start by explaining what all this is." The Cosmic Emporium houses 9,472 artifacts from 1,357 distinct civilizations across 89 star systems and 17 temporal planes. Would you like a complete inventory? God, no. Morgan pinched the bridge of their nose. Just, what am I supposed to do with all this? Previous proprietor Zhang conducted business by acquiring unique artifacts and selling them to collectors. Your inheritance includes all inventory, the shop itself, and trading licenses for 37 sentient species homeworlds. Morgan's head swam. How am I supposed to know what any of this is worth, or even what it does? I contain full records of all acquisitions and sales. Additionally, I can translate for 4,291 languages and dialects, though some translations are approximate. Morgan spent the next several hours in a daze, wandering the seemingly endless aisles of the shop. TES followed as a small floating orb, rattling off information about objects that defied physics and common sense alike. There was a teacup that always remained full, a book whose pages revealed different text, depending on who read it, and what appeared to be a stuffed animal that quietly purred and occasionally phased through solid matter. And what about this? Morgan pointed to a small crystalline structure that seemed to be growing and shrinking almost imperceptibly. Ah. TS paused. That would be a concentrated memory crystal from the Mnemosyne Collective. It contains approximately 700 years of experiences from a being that existed primarily as pure thought, acquired by trade for a pair of authentic 20th century roller skates. Morgan blinked. You're joking. I am not programmed for humor, Proprietor Chen. As the station's artificial day cycle began to dim toward evening, Morgan had managed to grasp only the barest understanding of the shop's inventory and operations. TS was helpful but literal-minded, and Great Uncle Zhang's organizational system seemed to be based on some incomprehensible personal logic rather than any standard classification. Morgan was about to call it a day when the shop's entrance chimed. The sound sent a strange vibration through the floor, as if something massive had triggered the sensors. TESS, do we have a customer? Affirmative. Species identification confirms a draconid of the stellar flame clutch. Classification: extremely rare visitor. Threat assessment: significant. Threat assessment. Morgan hissed, but fell silent as the source of the vibrations came into view. The being that emerged from between the shelves was, unmistakably, a dragon. Standing nearly 3 meters tall, even with its serpentine neck curved downward, it resembled the eastern dragons of Earth mythology, but with scales that shimmered with the deep iridescence of an oil slick on a starlit night. Its eyes were golden, vertical pupils fixed intently on Morgan. "I seek the proprietor," the dragon said, its voice a resonant rumble that seemed to bypass Morgan's ears and vibrate directly in their chest. Morgan swallowed hard. That's me. Morgan Chen. I inherited this place recently." The dragon studied Morgan for an uncomfortably long moment. "You are not Zhang. He was my great-uncle. He's no longer available." Something that might have been amusement flickered across the dragon's features. Temporal displacement. "That's what they tell me." The dragon nodded as if this explained everything. "I am Casimir of the Stellar Flame Clutch. Zhang, and I had dealings in the past." Morgan straightened their posture, trying to project confidence they absolutely did not feel. "Welcome to the Cosmic Emporium, Casimir. How can I help you today?" The dragon's massive head swung around, surveying the shop. "I seek something specific, something Zhang acquired from me, but was holding until the appropriate time." "TSS," Morgan whispered. The A's voice came softly. "Records indicate proprietor Zhang was safeguarding an item for a draconic client. It is stored in the Omega Vault." "And where is that?" Morgan asked. "Subbasement level 3, behind quantum-locked security measures." "Great," Morgan nodded to Casimir. "I believe we may have what you're looking for, if you'll follow me." The dragon moved with surprising grace for its size, following Morgan through the winding aisles. TS guided them to a spiral staircase that seemed to descend far deeper than should have been possible within the station. 3 levels down, they reached a massive door of some dark, reflective material that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. "Bioscan required," TS announced. Morgan pressed their palm against the door, feeling a strange tingling sensation. The door hummed, then silently slid open to reveal a small chamber containing only a pedestal. On it sat an object that appeared to be a small, irregular sphere about the size of a baseball, composed of what looked like rough-hewn obsidian with veins of pulsing red energy running through it. "The heart of Calamar," Casimir breathed, a wisp of actual flame escaping between razor-sharp teeth. "What exactly is it?" Morgan asked, curiosity temporarily overriding their fear. "It is complicated," the dragon replied. "In simplest terms, it is a key." Morgan eyed the object warily. "A key to what?" Casimir's golden eyes fixed on Morgan. "To the salvation or destruction of several worlds, including your Earth." Before Morgan could process this alarming statement, a klaxon began to wail throughout the shop. TS's voice came, urgency overriding its usual placid tone. "Perimeter breach detected. 6 armed entities have entered the premises. Identification scan indicates hegemony enforcement agents." Casimir hissed, a sound like steam escaping a pressure valve. "They found me faster than anticipated." "Who?" Morgan demanded, fear turning to annoyance. "What is going on here?" "The hegemony are." Casimir paused, seemingly searching for words. "Think of them as a coalition of species who believe technological and cultural development should follow a specific path. They regulate the distribution of what they consider dangerous knowledge and artifacts. And this is one of those artifacts." Morgan gestured to the obsidian sphere. "It is knowledge in physical form. The crystallized understanding of a science your species is not yet permitted to possess." Morgan's eyes widened. "Not permitted. By whom?" by those who arrived in your solar system first and claimed regulatory rights, Casimir said, as if this was obvious. The hegemony has classified Earth as a developing world under quarantine protection. Certain technologies are restricted from human acquisition for another 143 of your years. The klaxon wailed louder. TSS's voice returned. Hegemony agents are proceeding to subbasement level 2. Estimated arrival: 47 seconds. Morgan stared at the heart of Calamar, mind racing. And you want this because my kind believe knowledge belongs to those willing to seek it, not those designated worthy by bureaucrats, Casimir said. The heart contains understanding that could free dozens of species from hegemony control, including, eventually, humanity. Or destroy worlds, as you said. Casimir's massive head dipped in acknowledgement. Knowledge is inherently neutral. Its application determines its virtue. Morgan had approximately 5 seconds to make a decision that apparently could affect the future of Earth itself. Great Uncle Zhang had trusted this dragon enough to hold this artifact for him. But Zhang had also ended up temporally displaced, whatever that meant. 30 seconds to breach, TS announced. Morgan made a decision. They grabbed the heart of Calamar, feeling a strange warmth pulse through their fingers as they touched it. I don't know if I trust you, Morgan told Casimir frankly. But I definitely don't trust anyone who thinks they get to decide what humans are permitted to know. For the first time, the dragon's mouth curved in what might have been a smile. A very human response. Zhang would approve. Is there another way out of here? Morgan asked TSS. Emergency teleport pad in the corner, the AI responded. Activation requires proprietary authorization. That would be me, I guess. Morgan stepped onto the small circular platform, gesturing for Casimir to join them. Though how the massive dragon would fit was beyond comprehension. Yet somehow, as Casimir stepped onto the platform, the dragon seemed to compact, folding space around itself until it stood only slightly taller than Morgan. Dimensional compression, Casimir explained, noting Morgan's shock. Useful for fitting into human architecture. The sound of boots on stairs echoed down the corridor. TESS, get us out of here, Morgan commanded. Destination? The AI inquired calmly. Morgan looked at the dragon beside them and the strange artifact in their hand. They had inherited far more than just a shop, it seemed. Somewhere safe, Morgan said. Somewhere we can figure out what to do with this thing. The teleport pad hummed to life as the first of the hegemony agents appeared in the doorway, weapon raised. The last thing Morgan saw before reality dissolved around them was the agent's expression of shock, not at Casimir, but at Morgan themselves. Human, the agent shouted. You are interfering in matters beyond your clearance level. Then everything vanished in a flash of light. Morgan had just become an interstellar fugitive, all because they'd inherited an alien antique shop and a dragon had walked in as their first customer. Great Uncle Zhang had a lot to answer for, wherever, or whenever, he was. The bargain and the battle. The teleport deposited Morgan and Casimir in what appeared to be a small circular room with curved walls of burnished metal. Soft blue lighting activated automatically as they materialized. TSS, Morgan called, steadying themselves against a wall. Where are we? Emergency safehouse module. The AI's voice responded from a small speaker in the ceiling. Previous proprietor Zhang maintained several secure locations throughout the Proxima system. This unit is currently in orbit around Proxima Centauri C, cloaked and shielded. Morgan looked at the obsidian sphere still clutched in their hand. The red veins pulsed more rapidly now, almost like a heartbeat. It's responding to the change in location, Casimir observed, still in his compressed form. The heart is semi-sentient. Fantastic, Morgan muttered. A semi-sentient doomsday device. Just what I needed today. Casimir made a sound that might have been a chuckle. It is not a weapon, human. Though I understand why you might be alarmed. Morgan carefully set the heart on a small table in the center of the room. I think you owe me an explanation. A real one. The dragon's golden eyes studied Morgan for a long moment. Very well. Your species has a concept of technological singularity, a theoretical point beyond which progress becomes uncontrollable and irreversible. Morgan nodded. Sure. When artificial intelligence surpasses human intelligence and accelerates technological development beyond our understanding. The heart of Calamar contains knowledge from beyond such a singularity, Casimir said. Not AI, but a different path altogether. The creators were the Calmarans, a species that evolved in a system with unusual quantum properties. They developed technology based not on electronics or even quantum computing as you understand it, but on something they called consciousness engineering. Morgan frowned. That sounds like pseudoscience. To a pre-singularity species, any sufficiently advanced technology appears as mysticism, Casimir countered. The Calmarans learned to externalize consciousness, to encode it into crystalline matrices. They could transfer knowledge directly, mind to mind, species to species. And this is their technology. Morgan gestured to the sphere. It is the distilled understanding of their core principles, a primer, if you will, encoded in a form that can interface directly with organic neural systems. Morgan took an instinctive step back from the table. It messes with your brain. It communicates, Casimir corrected. The knowledge transfers without destruction or alteration of the receiving consciousness. That is what makes it so valuable, and so threatening to the hegemony. Because knowledge is power, Morgan said slowly. Precisely. The hegemony maintains control by regulating the flow of technological advancement. Species are permitted to advance only along approved paths, at approved rates. The Calmarans represented an alternative paradigm, one that could not be controlled. Morgan's eyes widened. So the hegemony destroyed them. Casimir's head dipped in affirmation. 8,000 years ago, by your reckoning, they were deemed a Class 1 existential threat to galactic stability. Morgan stared at the heart, its red veins pulsing hypnotically. And you want this because, my kind, the Draconid, were once close allies of the Calmarans. We were entrusted with preserving fragments of their knowledge. For millennia, we have safeguarded what remains, distributing pieces to those we deem worthy when the time is right. And Earth is worthy now. Not Earth, Casimir said, fixing Morgan with those unsettling golden eyes. You. Before Morgan could process this statement, TES interrupted. Proximity alert. Hegemony vessel detected on approach vector. How did they find us? Morgan demanded. The heart emits a unique quantum signature when active, Casimir explained. It is difficult to track, but not impossible. Morgan ran a hand through their hair in frustration. Great, so we're sitting ducks. Not necessarily, TEist interjected. This safe house is equipped with defensive capabilities and an emergency FTL module. FTL. We can jump to another star system. Affirmative. However, the module requires 12 minutes to power up from cold start. Estimated hegemony intercept. 8 minutes. Morgan looked at Casimir. Any ideas, Dragon? Casimir's compressed form began to expand, filling more of the small room as he reverted to his true size. I can fight. In space? Morgan asked incredulously. The dragon's mouth curved in what was definitely a smile this time, revealing rows of teeth like polished daggers. My kind evolved in the void between stars, human. We were crossing the empty dark while your ancestors were still perfecting stone tools. Wait, Morgan said, realization dawning. Dragons are aliens? Like actual aliens from space. Where did you think your myths came from? Casimir asked, seeming genuinely amused. We visited Earth many times throughout your history. Some of us found your world charming. Before Morgan could fully process the implications of dragons being extraterrestrials, the safe house shuddered violently. Tractor beam engaged, TS announced. Hegemony vessel attempting forced docking. I require access to exterior, Casimir said. Can your system provide an airlock? Affirmative, TS replied. Starboard maintenance hatch can be converted to vacuum protocol. Morgan's mind raced. Wait, we need a plan. If you go out there and they kill you, I'm still stuck with this. They pointed to the heart. A valid concern, Casimir conceded. What do you propose? Morgan stared at the heart, thinking frantically. Then their eyes widened. TSS, you said Great Uncle Zhang had multiple safe houses. Correct. There are 7 throughout the Proxima system, and they all have teleport capability. Affirmative. Morgan snatched up the heart. Can you teleport just this object to another safe house? Theoretically possible, TS acknowledged. However, quantum entanglement protocols would require. Yes or no, TSS? Yes, Proprietor Chen. Morgan nodded decisively. Do it. Send the heart to another safe house. Don't tell us which one. Casimir's eyes narrowed. An interesting strategy. You seek to remove the prize from the battlefield. Exactly. If we don't know where it is, we can't reveal its location, even under duress. The safe house shuddered again, more violently this time. A metallic groaning sound echoed through the structure. Hull breach imminent, TS warned. Forced entry in approximately 45 seconds. Do it now, TSS, Morgan ordered. The heart of Calamar glowed briefly, then vanished in a flash of red light. Teleport successful, TS confirmed. Heart of Calamar relocated to secure location. Morgan turned to Casimir. Now we just need to survive long enough to retrieve it later. The dragon's form began to shift, scales flowing like liquid metal as its body elongated. I will handle the hegemony vessel. You should secure yourself. This may become turbulent. A panel slid open in the wall, revealing what looked like a crash couch with restraints. Morgan strapped themselves in as Casimir approached the maintenance hatch TS had indicated. I've never seen a dragon in actual combat before, Morgan said, trying to mask their nervousness with humor. Casimir looked back, golden eyes gleaming. Few have lived to speak of it. Then, more softly, your great uncle would be proud of your quick thinking, Morgan Chen. You have his spirit. Before Morgan could respond, the safe house rocked with an explosive impact. The lights flickered, and emergency sirens began to wail. Forced breach in progress, TS announced. Hegemony agents have entered the primary airlock. Casimir hissed, a sound like superheated steam. Too late for subtlety, then. He turned to the wall opposite the approaching invaders and simply tore through it, claws rending the metal as if it were paper. The explosive decompression nearly yanked Morgan from the crash couch despite the restraints. Emergency shutters slammed down over the breach almost instantly, but not before Morgan caught a glimpse of something impossible. Casimir, fully expanded to his true form, a serpentine body at least 30 meters long unfurling in the vacuum of space, wings of what looked like pure energy extending from his shoulders. With the breach sealed, Morgan could no longer see outside, but TSS provided a running commentary through the emergency speakers. Draconid entity engaging hegemony vessel. Significant damage to hegemony primary propulsion systems. Hegemony deploying automated defense drones. Draconid employing some form of directed energy attack. Meanwhile, Morgan could hear the hegemony agents moving through the safe house, getting closer to the main chamber. Their voices carried through the thin internal walls, harsh, clicking sounds interspersed with what must have been translator devices rendering their speech into standard Galactic. No sign of the artifact. Scan shows recent quantum displacement. The human must know. Morgan tensed as the door to the chamber hissed open. 3 figures entered, humanoid but clearly not human. They stood nearly 2 meters tall, with elongated limbs and smooth gray skin that seemed to absorb light. Their faces were flat, with 4 small, black eyes arranged in a diamond pattern, and breathing apertures where a nose would be on a human. They wore sleek black armor and carried weapons that looked like a cross between rifles and surgical instruments. Human, the lead agent said, its voice a synthetic approximation coming from a device at its throat. Where is the Calmaran artifact? Morgan raised their hand slowly. Gone. I teleported it away. The agent's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. Impossible. Your species lacks the technological capacity for independent quantum transference. I didn't say I understood how it works, Morgan replied truthfully. The shop's I handled it. The agents conferred briefly in their native language, a series of clicks and whistles. The lead agent turned back to Morgan. The location, provided immediately. I don't know. I specifically instructed the AI not to tell me. The agent raised its weapon. This is a Class 3 neural persuader. It will make this conversation considerably less comfortable for you. Morgan swallowed hard but kept their expression defiant. You can't persuade me to tell you something I don't know. Before the agent could respond, the entire safe house lurched violently to one side. TSS's voice came through the speakers, sounding almost smug. Hegemony vessel primary power core breach detected. Catastrophic failure imminent. The agents scrambled to maintain their balance as the artificial gravity fluctuated wildly. The lead agent activated a communication device on its wrist. Emergency extraction. Repeat, emergency extraction. A blue light began to encompass the 3 agents, some kind of teleport field. As they began to fade, the lead agent fixed its 4 black eyes on Morgan. This is not concluded, human. The hegemony has a long memory and longer reach. Your species' quarantine status will be reevaluated. Then they were gone, leaving Morgan alone in the damaged safe house. TS's voice returned. Hegemony vessel retreating. Significant damage sustained. Draconid entity returning to safe house. The maintenance hatch that Casimir had originally intended to use slid open, and the dragon entered, once again in his compressed form, though looking somewhat battle-worn. His scales had lost some of their luster, and what appeared to be ichor of a deep blue color seeped from several wounds along his flanks. You're hurt, Morgan said, unstrapping from the crash couch. Superficial damage. Casimir dismissed. The hegemony's weapons are designed to incapacitate, not kill. They would not risk destroying the heart. They're gone. For now, they will report to their superiors and return with greater force. Morgan sank into a chair, the adrenaline crash hitting hard. So what now? We can't keep running forever. Casimir settled onto his haunches. No, but perhaps we need not run at all. What do you mean? The hegemony operates by rules, rigid, bureaucratic protocols. They are not conquerors by nature, but regulators. They seek to maintain what they see as balance. Morgan frowned. So we negotiate, Casimir said simply. We offer them something they want more than the heart. Like what? What could possibly be more valuable than this supposed universe-changing knowledge? Casimir's golden eyes gleamed. Legitimacy. Over the next hour, as TSS guided the damaged safe house into a stable orbit and began self-repairs, Casimir explained his plan. The Draconid had been waging a shadow war against hegemony influence for millennia, but it was a losing battle. The hegemony controlled too many resources, too many worlds. But what they cannot control, Casimir explained, is narrative. They position themselves as benevolent guides, easing developing species into the galactic community at the appropriate pace. If that image were threatened, you want to expose them, Morgan asked. I want to offer them a choice, Casimir corrected. Public acknowledgement of humanity's right to self-determination in exchange for certain concessions. You're going to blackmail the space police. Diplomatic negotiation, Casimir said, with what might have been a draconic wink. 2 days later, the hegemony returned, not with a battle fleet, but with a single diplomatic vessel. By then, Morgan and Casimir had retrieved the heart from its hiding place and prepared their terms. The negotiations took place on neutral ground, an automated trading post in orbit around Proxima's outermost planet. Morgan, still struggling to believe they were representing humanity in an interstellar diplomatic incident, less than a week after inheriting an antique shop, presented their case. "The heart stays with me," Morgan stated firmly to the three hegemony representatives. "Not for use, but for safekeeping. In exchange, humanity's quarantine status is downgraded to observer status, allowing us to learn about the wider galaxy while developing at our own pace." The lead diplomat, a different species than the enforcement agents, with a more mollusk-like appearance, made a gesture of tentative agreement. "This is highly irregular. Your species is not scheduled for contact for another century at minimum." "Yet here we are," Morgan countered. "You can either work with us openly or drive us underground. And if what Casimir tells me is true, you really don't want humans going underground with something to prove." The hegemony representatives conferred among themselves. Finally, the lead diplomat turned back to Morgan. "We will require assurances that the Calmaran technology will not be utilized." "It won't," Morgan promised. "It stays locked away, studied but not implemented, until humanity reaches the appropriate development stage naturally." "And who determines this appropriate stage?" Morgan smiled. "We do, but we're willing to listen to advice." It took another full day of negotiations, but eventually an agreement was reached. The heart of Calamar would remain in Morgan's custody, secured in a special vault within the Cosmic Emporium. A hegemony observer would be stationed at the Proxima trade station, maintaining discreet surveillance while official first contact with Earth was accelerated, not immediately, but within the next decade rather than century. As Casimir and Morgan prepared to return to the shop, the dragon seemed thoughtful. "You handled that with remarkable skill for someone who was a museum conservator a week ago." Morgan shrugged. "Turns out running an interstellar antique shop isn't so different from museum work. You still have to deal with entitled collectors, confusing artifacts, and bureaucracy." Casimir made the rumbling sound that Morgan now recognized as laughter. "Indeed. And what will you do now, Morgan Chen? Will you continue as proprietor of the Cosmic Emporium?" Morgan looked out the viewport at the stars. So many stars, so many worlds they had never imagined visiting until now. Great Uncle Zheng's final gift wasn't just a shop. It was a door to the universe. "I think I will," Morgan said finally. "Someone has to keep an eye on that heart thing, and I've always had a knack for preservation. Besides," they added with a smile, "how many humans can say they have a dragon as a regular customer?" Casimir's golden eyes gleamed with something like approval. "I believe you, and I will have many interesting transactions in the future, Morgan Chen." As they docked at the Proxima trade station and made their way back to the Cosmic Emporium, Morgan realized that despite the danger and confusion of the past few days, they felt more alive than they had in years. The shop still looked the same from the outside, sandwiched between the noodle bar and the tattoo parlor. But now Morgan understood it was so much more. It was their place in the galaxy, and perhaps in some small way, humanity's first real foothold among the stars. Morgan unlocked the door, noting that TESS had already repaired the damage from the hegemony's intrusion. The familiar, impossible interior welcomed them back. "Welcome home, Proprietor Chen," TES greeted. "You have 17 messages waiting and 3 customers browsing the upper levels." Morgan straightened their shoulders and stepped inside. Time to get to work. After all, running an alien antique shop was a complicated business, especially when your first customer was a dragon.